Is Scarpetta on Amazon Prime worth your time? That's what we're going to dive into in this video, and I will truly do my best to give you kind of all sides of it so you can really decide. This is a spoiler-free zone, so don't you worry if you've not yet watched it. So, what is this show? Essentially, this is an 8-part series, and every episode is roughly 50 minutes. 50 minutes. And we have, of course, this positioned with the great Nicole Kidman and really the great Jamie Lee Curtis and many other great actors as a bit of a prestige drama mystery. But I need to start right there. It's very, very important that you know right at the start, this is not really a mystery. And while that may be debatable in some circles, I'm going to say this is conceived and written far more like an intense drama, a real prestige drama, streaming drama is what it seems to want to be. But because of that, it ends up not being able to satisfy most of the things that mystery lovers love about mysteries. So we're going to dive into that a little bit more. I do want to say though, inside of this family drama, we do have a lot of comic relief. And that beautifully does come in the form of none other, and who else would we want it from, than Jamie Lee Curtis. She delivers from start to finish. So let's start there as in terms of like, who is this for? If you are no matter what, a Jamie Lee Curtis fan, and you say, I would watch her in anything. I love to see everything that she does. This show may be worth your while because she fulfills so much throughout this entire show, and she can turn on a dime. She gives us drama, she gives us comedy, she gives us horror movie, she gives us all of these things in the same scene sometimes, and she is nearly faultless, despite the words that have to come out of her mouth that have nothing really to do with her. So, if you're a Jamie Lee Curtis fan, you might like this show. But if you're a mystery fan, it's actually far more drama than a mystery. So this whole show is an adaptation of the novels of Patricia Cornwell. Let's talk about this for a hot second. If you are a fan of Patricia Cornwell or the Patricia Cornwell K. Scarpetta novels or the other series that Patricia Cornwell has written, I frankly can't remotely imagine how you would in any way enjoy this show. Because number one, it's not a mystery. Number two, the drama is totally over the top. And number three, they have actually somehow decided to combine two novels that are roughly 25, 30 years apart and combine them into this one show. And that really is what I'm going to say is the fundamental flaw of this show in terms of trying to combine two time periods that we have to deal with and two totally different stories, one of which is quite compelling and the other of which became so over-the-top ludicrous Scooby-Doo before we knew it. I truly can only laugh. As I recorded any videos as I watched these episodes live without knowing anything else about the show, it became so ridiculous so quickly and just got worse and worse and worse. But that's really not even the worst part of it. It is really the fact that if you are a Patricia Cornwell fan, it appears that the one part of this story that goes back in time is based on the first K. Scarpetta novel. And if you love that, I think that is maybe the strongest part of this show. It is the part of the show that has nothing to do with Nicole Kidman or Jamie Lee Curtis or the now set of actors. It's going back into the past. It's a whole different set of actors, but that is the strongest storyline. Now, I will say before we go anywhere else, that storyline is about serial killers. In the world of mystery in general, serial killers are the least compelling or interesting for me to watch because they're acting from some compulsion, for the most part, rather than from circumstances dictating really bad choices, right? So serial killers kind of fall in a different category. I'm not here for true crime. I'm not here really for serial killers. If that's part of a larger mystery series and that's just what happens, I will let it be. But this is central to this. And I think if you're a fan of that first K. Scarpetta, Patricia Cornwell novel, you might like to see it come to life. But I will say, I don't think it's worth your time. I don't think you're going to find it satisfying, because what you have to sacrifice to get to that story and watch the chaos play out, that's the main problem. So let's just say Patricia Cornwell, I can't imagine you deserve what you received, that you thought that you got justice in handing over your novels and IP to this set of an adaptation. But suffice to say, what's wrong with the show? We're talking around what's wrong, but let's dive into it. Essentially, we have a storyline based on one novel that's in the current time, that's Nicole Kidman and her peers. And then we go back roughly 30 years to the 90s. And we have the younger K, or as Amazon Prime does not know what to do with this, calls it past K, but it can't end cleanly there, right? We have these two storylines. The problem is we are bouncing back and forth, much like a cat with a laser beam. Have you ever seen a cat with a laser beam? That's the problem. We are back and forth so much. So the thing that you might love about a mystery is that we can go deep. We can go deep into the motives of a crime and all the different lies that the set and cast of characters are telling us. It can be quite complicated in and of itself, in a wonderful way, to watch a cast of 8, 10, maybe 15 people in one timeline and storyline play out to figure out what are their motives, who even are they? And we don't get that cleanly in this show at all. You won't find that here. Instead, you will find yourself bouncing back and forth in time. You will find yourself trying to even identify who these characters are being introduced as, but then you will have the onus and burden put on you, where you then have to go back 30 years and see if you can identify the same people and see if you can identify them switching back and forth far too much in those first few episodes. And it's like whiplash, but it actually ends up like visual and familiarity whiplash, because I was so struggling to identify who these people were and then who those counterparts were all the while, right? If you have one interesting timeline and you multiply that by 2, we don't stop there. We then get a multiplication exponentially, it feels like, of victims. This timeline has that crime and those victims. This timeline has this crime and this victims. So not only do we have to keep track of these overly complex storylines, we have characters multiplying by the episode. We have names being thrown at us, proper names of businesses and bad actors thrown at us. We have names that we'll never hear again given to us, and it just becomes baffling. So if you are the fan of what I'm far more accustomed to watching, which is these tight, gorgeous British procedural shows where we get to dive deep and understand who the victim even was and why this crime might have happened, you're getting none of that. It's so superficial. And worst of all, whether it is written that way or directed that way, all these turning point milestones where we're meant to now follow the plot in a new direction are glossed over so quickly, you will get whiplash. So there's so many functional problems where the development of these two storylines, trying to make them work, coming together, it really doesn't work. The writing as well, to me, is fundamentally flawed because it does less of what a great mystery writing experience gives you. How we follow these paths, how people obfuscate and lie because they don't want to be found out if they've committed a crime, and how people who don't want their privacy to be infringed upon are not going to tell the truth. So a lot of people are lying, perhaps, right? In this situation, instead of that and complexity and maturity, we get a lot of these dangling carrots where people are saying things and no one's saying the only obvious thing that you would say to that. And it happens over and over and over Just like repetition, because we're going back and forth in time like metronome, tick, 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 right? There's so much repetition to help you as an audience member, it doesn't really do the job. But not only that, we then have an additional timeline and set of actors brought into this. It's so baffling. I don't know who thought. Really, ultimately, a couple things come to mind. I don't know who gave this a thumbs up. I don't know who didn't have the cojones, let's say, to say, this doesn't seem to be developing in a good way. Let's reassess this. I don't know in a writer's room how not one person apparently was able to say, this doesn't ring true. Or if they've been together for 30 years, would they really have this conversation? Because anything may be possible, but 95% of things are truly not probable. But this story goes into the fantasy Scooby-Doo land completely. So if you love a tight, greatly plotted, well-told mystery, you won't understand this. You won't understand this. I'm going to commit to that. You certainly won't enjoy it. It's not going to give us the things that we love. If you love a family drama, I feel like you won't even be satisfied from the family drama aspect because the procedural mystery stuff honestly just seems to get in the way, but much of it doesn't even make sense. There are many points where I'm saying, who is even in charge here? And that really doesn't make sense. So let's talk about just a couple other interesting things if you are a fan of British mysteries, right? This really does fall into the crime thriller genre, but it still delivers a procedural mystery. So in some ways, it is almost more like a Dan Brown type of experience, and we know what those adaptations are like. This one is the messiest I've ever seen, ever, I think, and I tend to watch a lot of them, but this one's a hot mess. If you're a fan of the Harlan Coben type of mysteries, even the ones that go back in flashbacks, you will not be satisfied here. Those are tight, they're twisty, they're turny, they're quite fascinating, and they're very well plotted. And even when they seem a touch fantastical, my credulity is not tested so much. In this one, so many things are thoroughly incredulous, it's hard to believe. I'm not even going to give you spoilers based on technology, but boy, does tech play a part where there's no real reason for it. So, my main issue with this show that I think is like a cardinal sin is a big difference between British shows and American shows. Ofcom, who is like the screen regulator of television, maybe movies, but definitely television in the UK, there is a kind of standard where you cannot show, well, you're really, it's kind of based on taste. You're really requested as a production not to show gratuitous violence, not to show gratuitous dead bodies. We're still trying to portray a story about something horrific and awful with some sense of human dignity. So in this show, none of those standards appear to apply at all. There's so much personal violence that we have to watch that does make sense and move the story forward to some degree. So it's not like saying that we're trying to sanitize this. It's fine to watch that. There's quite a bit of it. But there's so much shown of dead bodies in this show that I guess is trying to confirm the crime element and maybe emphasize the thriller element. But I do say my at least personal preference here is if you don't like gratuitous, over-the-top results of violence and violence, this is not for you. This is no Vera. This is no Silent Witness. This is no forensic show like I think the best of forensic shows are done. So if you like any forensic show, this is not for you. Nicole Kidman is meant to be a very high-level, respected forensic pathologist. We very rarely see her even performing pathology. She's periodically performing autopsies. She just seems pissed off at everything she's doing in this specific show. But even when we go back to her early on in the past time period, many things she does are very questionable, and we don't get to see much pathology or even appreciate or understand some of the science that is the most interesting thing about how these crimes are solved. So, The shows push credulity. The shows are very far-fetched in grounding something in a good storyline and trying to match it with a really bizarre, I would say much weaker storyline. The actors do their best. They truly, I think, do their best to deal with the incomplete, rather shoddy stuff they're being asked to say, and the questionable. I can't really tell if this show was directed to do its best with the writing it was given or titillate as well, but these actors are truly, in my opinion, trying to do their best. The questions outside the production are really where this lies. So let's just end there. Do you think this sounds like it's worth your time? I think the only way to end this completely is saying, I did search to see, has this been renewed for a season 2? And more telling than anything, if you search for that, it might give you some answer such as, yes, it's been renewed, but not so. Much like much of this show. Is it a mystery? It's a bait and switch. It's a family drama with some weird comedy elements thrown in here. Much like that, this show was not renewed. This show is so weak. This show was essentially ordered initially as a 2-series show. So I believe it's currently in production, it appears to be. Does it deserve a second season? That's the whole point. Based on what I've said, I will be happy to answer questions for you because so much is so over the top about this show. If you still want to know if it's worth your while, let me know. I think the only person this could possibly be for is lovers of Jamie Lee Curtis. I can't imagine anyone else wanting to suffer through the difficulty and lack of satisfaction that is this show. So from my angle, not only is the show really hard to watch and difficult to follow, not only is it written very poorly, but it doesn't give us what we love about mysteries and what essentially, again, I've said this quite a few times in different places for this show, I almost never talk about good writing. The writing is so poor, we can't not talk about the writing. And plot lines, writing in British shows, this is nothing like that. So what do you think? Do you want to watch this show? Do you got a question for me that I will be happy to answer on video for you? I'll be happy to do a short if you got another question about it, but I wouldn't give it your time. And when I even think about going forward to watching a season 2, it's not with joy. So let me know if this makes you want to watch this, if you definitely do now want to watch this train wreck, because that's your thing too. Maybe if you're a fan of The Housewives and a train wreck is what you want to see and a lot of hot messes, maybe it might be for you, but I'm not even sure of that.